rather than getting on the comments on my YouTube shorts about the government needs to build infrastructure. I wish more diaspora would sit on. Here's an idea that I think would be an amazing business idea. Please take it. You are not able to get me closer to my business goals through relationships. I'm so sorry, there's no leverage. And so what does that mean? If I had to do it differently, instead of me getting a loan to buy a hydroelectric power dam, because I'm in industrialization in Congo. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Nohemie podcast. Let me turn on my recording. Like I said, welcome to the Nohemie podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to reintroduce myself. Your girl Nohemie. Think of me as your big sister who builds businesses in Africa and now thinking more about investing than building, because we're too old to keep building. We want to invest and own. So for today's episode, I'm going to talk about none other than leverage. A lot of you probably heard this word before. You probably see it all over social media. As the middle class is getting squeezed in the Western economy, people are realizing that they don't really own much. Instead, they've been part of the, how can I say this, labor force of capitalism. And so now they're realizing leverage, whether that's through media, whether that's through relationship, comes into play. Now for today's episode, I'm going to talk about leverage in the context of Africa. Okay, let's just start with something, a disclosure. If you're someone that's content building a small business where you make $1,000, $2,000 a month, I think that's great. I actually have a lot of friends that are in that space and they're super happy. They don't have sleeping issues like I do, but this is probably not the episode for you. Here, I want to talk about how leverage moves in Africa for those that are aiming to build multi-million dollar businesses, okay? So first to start off, let's just talk about why I came up with this idea. Now, I'm born in Congo, moved to Canada when I was super young, lived there most of my life, worked in California. Last 5 years, I've been in DRC, my native country, pretty much in the space of agro-processing, of honey, palm oil, and logistics. And now I'm in Nairobi, where our family is also trying to register a family business here, still in the same space. So the reason why this came up is because a lot of people that I see, either the African diaspora, either some Westerners, non-Black, that come to Africa, many of them come with pitch decks. And what they're doing, they're going around pitching their ideas, trying to sell their ideas, and they think that that's leverage. You're not leveraging, you are a beggar. And unfortunately, that is a sign of weakness. I know, I'm very harsh, but I think the reality is the real leverage in Africa is not about you convincing people to buy your product or your service. It's about what can you control. Yes, what can you control? Let's start, okay? So as always in my podcast, I always do lessons, and because I'm too pragmatic, I will literally give you on the ground truth strategies on how to counter this. Lesson number 1, the wrong kind of business. This goes back to the start of the video where I mentioned if you are content with a $1,000-$2,000 a month business, that's fine and it's not a bad thing. But be honest with yourself. If you want to make $10,000 a month, $1 million, so on, which is definitely possible in the African continent, the reality is the candle business from your home, the boutique selling imported clothing, the small scale trading business, when you're one of 100 people doing the same thing, is not going to get you there. These are not businesses that offer leverage. You have no control over supply. You have no control over pricing. You are literally a price taker who the supplier is imposing the price on you. If you were to disappear today, customers could just go next door, find someone else that does the same thing as you. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not leverage. If you disappear tomorrow and you can easily be replaced by the supplier, that is not leverage. That being said, I do believe competition in the marketplace is important because when there's competition, it means there's demand. However, let's be clear here. The harder the bottleneck, your ability to control that bottleneck, either as a supplier, either as a connector, let me tell you, you are going to make a lot of money. However, when you are in a space where there's 100,000 people doing the same thing as you, small importing, you are too replaceable. However, if there's only 5 of you, 10 of you in that space, you've hit the jackpot. And there's a reason why there's only 5 or 10 of you in that space, because it's such a hard bottleneck that all 5 of you own that little bottleneck and don't want to share the cake and you make so much money. So this is another thing. Lesson number 2. What real leverage looks like. You guys, we need to talk about this. And again, my eye when I do this because I'm looking at my laptop. The real leverage is when you control a bottleneck that other people have to pass through. What does that mean? Bottleneck, just literally think of it as a bottle that you're literally controlling what comes in, what comes out. Ladies and gentlemen, the harder the problem, the more money. And it's very simple how it works. When you sell a ticket item of a bigger amount, usually to businesses or high net worth individual and wealthy people, you tend to sell to a few, but a huge amount. When you solve a bottleneck to the mass, you have to play the game of volume. So if you're, for example, in logistics, what do you own in logistics? Do you own the truck? Do you own the distribution from supplier to consumer? Do you own the supply chain? And in the supply chain, which part has the most value? It's when you sit at the point where value is created, not just people passing you by, that you offer the most leverage. Let me give you a very simple example of DRC. This one is by far my most exciting thing about Congo right now. So a lot of you may not know this, but right now Congo has launched this energy licenses. So I think the government finally realized that energy is important for economic development. They're pretty much almost handing it out for free. What does that mean? For you to build an electricity sort of dam, you need a license from the government, and they're pretty much giving it away. What does that mean? In an ideal world, what do? Instead of you doing what I did, this is the mistake that I made, and this is what I want you to do instead. I own land in DRC. I went through the headache of getting a loan from a bank, a local bank, that claimed to give me 11% interest. But when you look at the fees, when you look at the SWIFT, when you look at all these things, in the end, I really paid 18% interest, and these banks have ridiculous transaction costs. So what does that mean? If I had to do it differently, instead of me getting a loan to buy a hydroelectric power dam, because I'm in industrialization in Congo, I need electricity. I went and got the loan. I took the hit with the loan, which is so high. Instead, what I should have done, reach out to Chinese companies, American capital or energy company, and say, hey, I'm Nohemie, I own this land, I'm in palm oil, I'm in honey. The palm oil demand in Congo is this amount. It takes 4 years. If you bring your machinery, if you bring your know-how, you install the electricity, what will happen is in 4 years, once I start selling my palm oil through the refinery, which needs electricity, I'm going to give you 30% of my dividends, of my profits, as a way for you to make the money back of the electricity that you installed. And number 2, by you installing electricity, let me just tell you, 64 megawatts is enough to power an entire village. By you installing electricity on my farm, I can then also attract other businesses around to start using the electricity and pay us. Electricity models that I love, South Africa and Kenya. Kenya, KPLC, sadly government owned, but KPLC, you pay M-Pesa, and I think 100 shillings is equivalent to like X amount of electricity units. And as you're consuming the electricity, it goes down and you have to top up by your M-Pesa. South Africa has a similar model due to their load shedding. Imagine if you do something like that, but for businesses, and businesses consume a lot of energy. So if I had to do it differently, which is what I want you to do, if you own land in DRC or in Kenya or in Abidjan or outside of the capital city, even better, don't go through the headache of trying to find the money to fund electricity. No. Work on making sure the land is under your name, get the license, and then you literally find companies, foreigners, that can provide you the know-how, the technology, the tools, the training of engineers, and then get them to manage the personnel of the electricity, get them to install everything. You simply sit back and let your land become an ecosystem where other businesses can pay for the electricity, where your refinery, your processing plant, once you make the sale, pays back this electricity company. And I really think that this is a beautiful model that I wish more people would tap into. And I know someone on my YouTube shorts where I was in Vietnam talking about how Africa, why aren't we tapping into infrastructure? Someone wrote a comment of like, to build in Africa, it requires infrastructure, it requires this, it requires that. Yes. But everything you just listed that is government owned, government's responsibility, you realize right now, these things are being privatized because they've realized the current governance is too weak to meet that demand. So they're privatizing it, and this is an opportunity. So lesson number 3, this one's my favorite. There are 4 types of leverage. And this is something, you guys, that I really had to recently grapple with. And the reason why this one I had to sit really strongly with is very simple why. Growing up in Canada, which is more like a mass middle class economy, you are told that the play is build a business. Actually, no, Canadians are very government jobs. It's more Americans, but American model, which influences Canada, you're told build a product, build a business, get customers. But then you come to the African continent, you realize the leverage is in relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, leverage type number 1, and this one I think is the most powerful. Relationship. In French, we say un carnet d'affaires. Ladies and gentlemen, your ability to gatekeep. The word gatekeeping is now being debunked on social media, but make no mistake, you still have to gatekeep to some extent. And the thing that you can gatekeep the most is your contacts. What do I mean by that? In a continent that's emerging like the African continent, who you know, aka your social capital, matters. Why? It's the difference between your business taking 5 years to take off because you're going through so many offices, so many people. It's an entire economy of 10 middlemen, not 1, but 10. Your ability to have that one person that is 1 degree away from the person that either gonna sign off on your license or is gonna give you a contract or is gonna give you capital, you just saved yourself years of a headache. Now here's why this is leverage. There are people that will pay you to get closer to the people that you're in touch with. Now this is where I think we need to set the record straight. A lot of people, they think they have good connections. Oh, my dad is like building apartment buildings in Kenya. Like everybody's doing that. Like go to a Kenyan bank, get a loan and build an apartment. Like that's not major leverage. Like you need to be real with yourself. Look at your phone book. And this is something that I do every year. I know some of you are going to be like, Nohemie, this is really harsh. Every year around October, I look at my phone now and I delete numbers. Unfortunately, I have to categorize you. If you are not able to get me closer to my business goals through relationships, I'm so sorry, there's no leverage. And I do the same. A lot of people contact my firm, Lubembo Intelligence, to help them penetrate the Congolese market. And now we're entering Kenya. What does that mean? People fear doing business in Congo, but they know that there's money in Congo. They come to me to help them identify businesses for them to invest in, land to rent on, like who to talk to. And you know what I do? There's a 10% fee minimum, depending on the size of the project, that I charge. I'm sorry, I just saved you years of headaches because I vetted the portfolios and the individuals. So ladies and gentlemen, who you know in this continent is your biggest leverage. And be honest with yourself. Do you know people that move the dial? Do you know people that are 1 degree away from capital? Do you know people that really, if you need a electricity energy license, they'll be able to get you to the right person within 2 seconds? That matters. Leverage type number 2, capital leverage. Now, this one I think is the pipeline advantage. And I really think this one, it really just means you control the capital. And I think there's 2 models with this one. I think the most known one is investors or multinationals who come with massive amount of capital from foreign countries and bring it to Africa. Maybe. But I think the second type of capital leverage that I think applies more to you and I is, as members of the diaspora, this is the kind of capital leverage that the diaspora doesn't talk about enough, that I think there's an opportunity. Some of you may or may not know, there's over $100 billion now. Billion or million? Hold on. I think I'm butchering myself. Yes, $100 billion annually in remittance. What does that mean? the diaspora in the West sending money to family back home. And it often goes to consumption, right? We all know school fees, health, funerals are the top three. So here's what's happening. UBA Bank, I think the Ghana African Bank, they're launching even like a remit to invest because they see so much money and opportunity. And here's the play that I wish more diaspora would sit on. Here's an idea that I think would be an amazing business idea. Please take it. Imagine if you are a Nigerian in Atlanta. We all know as Africans, because our culture mostly poor, people don't have life insurance back home. So when someone passes away, everybody pulls money together and trying to cover the funeral costs for back home. If you are a Nigerian in Atlanta, you are plugged into the Nigerian community, either through church, God knows what else, and you have built a reputation for being trustworthy. Here's what happens. In your church, for example, or in your Nigerian community in Atlanta or Maine, every time there's a funeral back in Abuja, you know 4 funeral homes and you get them to give you a fixed price for packaging. The people in Atlanta and Maine in the States, you become the person who they Venmo, they Zelle the total money to. You literally just give them a PDF. Here's the cost of the funeral, the hall, blah, blah, total. 10, 20 Nigerian people Zelle, Venmo you. This is a payment system we use in the States. And you become the person that takes that money, pays off the funeral, and then back home in Nigeria, people just show up. So what exactly are you providing in terms of a service here? You are controlling where the money transacts. You become the trustworthy person. And for something like that, I would charge 10%. 10% to the diaspora pulling the money and giving you the money to bring it back home. 10% of commission from the funeral homes back in Nigeria. You guys, this is what it is to control capital. We always think of capital as like investors coming with a lot of money, but it's not always the case. It's just a matter of you paying attention to where in the community are people already spending money. How do I position myself to be the person that is trustworthy, who controls that flow? And make no mistake, yes, today we have banking. Yes, today we have World Remit, NALA, and all that jazz. But many African communities still rely on an individual taking cash from Germany, from the States, from Canada, bringing it in their suitcase back home to avoid fees. And that could be you, but you could charge because you deliver. What you're really paying people for is the trust. And this is where I think capital leverage sits. And shameless plug, I'm launching a PDF for remittance for the diaspora because I think we're sitting on a lot of money here, and this PDF will allow you, no matter what African country you're from, to really leverage the remittance instead of keep sending it for consumption and seeing your mom cry that her money never melts or anything. You can now use this playbook, very short, 5 pages, max, very pragmatic, to build a business out of it. So anyways, there's so many businesses that I think we can leverage in the remittance game that we're not. Type 3 of leverage. This one is the bottleneck advantage. And this one we're talking about assets. Here's the thing. When you look in history, whenever there's an economic downturn like what's happening in Western Europe and now the States, people revert to tangible asset. What is an asset? Something that makes you money, okay? When something is losing money, it's a liability. Think of it like a car. Technically, a car loses value the moment it gets out of the shop when you buy it. However, if you're using your car, for example, to do deliveries, to make business errands like realtors, technically a car would be considered an asset because it's what's helping you make money. So when I think of asset, here what I'm talking about, and I really think in the case of Africa, this is actually the most powerful sometimes after relationships. You control a physical asset or a license or something that other people need in order to make money in their own businesses. This, you guys, is a game changer. What do I mean by that? Again, going back to the example of land. Many of us that are members of the diaspora, either our parents, uncles and aunts, whatever, we actually have land back home that we've abandoned. Or there's land back home outside of the capital city that you're sleeping on that's very cheap and you can buy it and you're more likely to have a good luck buying it because you're still technically national than a lot of the foreigners who have to go through us to buy land. So that's a physical asset because that asset, going back to the example of energy, which applies to many African countries, you can then attract other businesses to monetize on your land, and they pay you a percentage of that. So another example, for example, again, the license for energy. And again, DRC is just an example because it's my native country and it's one of the hardest markets in Africa. If you can make it in DRC, you'll be fine in Ghana and in Senegal, right? But DRC, for example, I don't know if you guys know this, China in last year allocated about $656 million to the Sino Hydro power in Busanga in DRC. So what does that mean? Now it is estimated that almost 1/10 of the entire DRC energy is going to be relying on Chinese structure. And when I say Chinese structure, when they implemented this project, you're talking Chinese standards, equipment, technology, know-how. I mean, these guys are like, we don't just want to extract. The moment we extract, we need to process and transform your minerals. Hello, that's 40 to 60% of the value in the value chain. Extraction of the minerals is only 5 to 10%. So what they did, they put the electricity in. Now, 1/10 of people in DRC, even those that are not in mining, if you are in the nearby area where they implemented this, you are not paying them electricity to use it. So again, you don't have to have 656 million, but you having land, you having a truck, you having something that is transportable for other things. I love even motorbikes. That's another piece of asset. You can deliver. This is what it is. Have a hard piece of asset or licenses. You have some kind of regulatory paperwork that allows you to then have other businesses monetize. Kenya right now, I think, is working on waste management licenses. Genius. It's this idea that the government is understanding that they're not able to control all the waste and the sewage in the city. So they're privatizing these licenses to individuals that want to build a business on it. This is genius. Now, type number 4 of leverage. You guys, this one, all right, I think a lot of you can relate because you see it all over. It's media. And I think this one is something we don't talk about enough in the context of Africa. Now, you've already seen on social media where, I mean, Michelle Obama has a podcast. Emma Green, love her. She has a podcast. She doesn't need the money. But guess what? When you see all these people that already have wealth and power get on the media front, that should tell you something. Media has become a business card. People Google your name before they meet you. A great example. Just an hour ago, I was at a meeting with the Chinese American Association. This is genius. These are folks that are from China, but immigrated to the States years ago. They really took advantage of the wave when China, back in the 70s, was new to the US and was able to benefit from that. Now, with the trading war, they're looking at Africa. And as I'm sitting there with him, and he's like, oh yeah, I Googled you and I looked you up. You're very active. I love what you do. This guy already knew me before I even opened my mouth. And he was like, that's why I agreed to meet with you. You guys, this is what media is. And here's where I would give you a little plug of leveraging media. Build in public. What do I mean by that? A lot of us Africans, we go on TikTok ranting, commenting vulgarity and stupidity about things that don't matter. I don't know if it's all Africans, but the Congolese community, especially Belgium, it's giving ratchet on TikTok. I just cannot. However, look at my YouTube. You guys, take my playbook. I have videos on Kinshasa Diaries. What am I doing there? I'm showing you how I'm building my business in Congo. I have a podcast where I'm literally giving you the ground truth of what I'm observing in Africa, of what makes businesses work. That is market intelligence, which is now a platform that I built called LubemboIntel.com. You guys, this is it. I wish a lot of you, as you're building, don't underestimate your idea yet. In the early stages of your business, as you're trying to be a trader importing corn into Nigeria, literally document it in public and share that with people, because that becomes leverage. And the reason why I think media leverage is super important for us members of the diaspora, for many reasons. One, we're not that funded a lot of time. Formal institutions don't really fund most African startups. So you building in public allows you to build credibility. Number two, what I love about media when we talk about leverage, you're letting people come to you. Like, I'm going to be honest, I don't do outreach. I really don't. The last year, I have not done outreach. People not come to me. You guys, that is a flex. When people come to you at the table, you negotiate different versus you going after people as a beggar. And I think this is what I love about media. And third, let's be honest, media is decentralized, democratized. Anyone with an iPhone, literally my podcast is filmed with an iPhone and a mic that I bought on Amazon for $10. You guys, this is the beauty of media. And I think there's so many people coming into this space, but Africa topic is still untapped. So get in now. So I really think those are the 4 types of leverage. And with each type, be very intentional. I think for the social one, the first one, I'm going to be honest, become very intentional about who you hang out with and what kind of relationship you're building. I know the Western in me wants to be kiki and friendly with everybody, but you guys, no, you're trying to make money moves, right? I think another one that really everybody here should, as a diaspora, should really leverage from is understanding what leverage really looks like, what it really means. Don't be just a talker, walk the walk. And as a diaspora member, understand that your national ethnicity gives you leverage in terms of easily acquiring asset, lands in the country if you know how to play the game right. So let's now go to lesson number 4. This one I think is what I call the diaspora mistake, okay? Now here's where the diaspora gets it wrong. I really think, and I talked about this earlier, is that a lot of us, you're building, first of all, the wrong type of business. And I'll talk about that next. But more importantly, you're building a business that depends on you being the smartest person in the room, because that is a massage to your ego. And you're building a business that has no barrier to entry. You guys, let me repeat that again. You need to control some kind of bottleneck. You need to keep some kind of network of contacts. When you are building a business that has no barrier to entry, meaning anyone can get in, this is why, contradicts a bit my last point, for example, monetizing on social media is getting harder. First of all, if your content is not targeting American consumers, you're very unlikely to even be able to monetize. A guy in India will grow his following drastically because of the Indian size population, but to get paid by YouTube, 100 times harder than the American with 100,000 followers. However, this is not to say that if you're in the States, you should not social media, but this is also to say that you need to understand the space in which you're coming in if you're trying to make money in social media. If you want to leverage social media to have a media presence, that's fine. But if you want to make your life content creator monetize, live off of that, it's getting harder because the space is getting so crowded and noisy. And I think a lot of Africans go into business, especially the diaspora, that there's just no barrier to entry. Anyone can come in and just replace you. Like, again, that candle business, love candles. I spend at least $30 a month on candles. But it's very hard to scale a candle business to the point where there's that much demand in Africa. In the West, maybe. Even then, most people are now doing it from their home. So it's very hard to scale it to that level, okay? Unless you add other stuff like pajamas, like hair set, again, in the West. But in Africa, that kind of lifestyle business is just not scalable. And I think another one is boutiques. You guys, I think we went through a phase where importing used clothing was like super popular, and it still kind of is a thing. But let me tell you, the Chinese have kind of broken that. Like, they pretty much took, and we used to import used clothes. And I say we, my people, okay, our skin color. These are used clothing that we import into the continent. We sell it on the street. The Chinese came and they're importing Shein clothing mixed with used clothing in a shop that is clean and nice. That's not even where they make most of their money. They make most of their money in importation, in distribution. You're easily replaceable. So I think that everyone needs to really focus, and members of the diaspora. And I think the question that you need to ask yourself is not, is this a good idea? That's not a good question. The real question is, can anyone else do this? And if it's 5, 10 people, fine. But if it's 100, 200 people that can do it, and if it's a Chinese manufacturer that can do it, you guys, cut your losses and just know you have no leverage. Lesson number 5, build businesses that others can leverage on. You guys, this is the example that I gave earlier of the land, right? And the energy license. This is such a huge moneymaker. You become an architect in an ecosystem. You own the land, You get the capital and the machinery, the know-how for electricity from a foreigner, a Western company. You get the license because you're national and all that jazz, and you're local. Even though you're diaspora, you're still considered national technically in most African countries. And what happens is once they install the electricity, the energy, you literally will naturally attract other businesses, residential, who now pay you for the electricity, and that profit, you split it with the people that install the energy. You guys, it is genius. And again, this goes back to what I said, lesson number 5, build a business that others can leverage on. What does that mean? You own the piece of the pie, you own the foundation, and other businesses, other people need what you have in order for them to make money. You're not dependent on a one-time transaction. You are dependent on a B2B transaction at scale. That's the game changer. And I really think it goes back to the previous point that I made. Not every business offers leverage. You need to be aware of that. It is a reality. And I think in the world of AI, we have convinced ourselves that being a solopreneur is going to be the next billionaire. Fine, and there's some truth to that. But here's my argument with that. If you can easily run a business by yourself and you have all these AI machines, you also can be easily copied and pasted. But your ability to own the foundation that other businesses are dependent on, that's a game changer. Hello, Amazon, AWS, that's exactly the playbook. Hello, Apple, iPhone. Steve Jobs changed the game for apps. We all needed the Apple architect to build apps for us to monetize on, and then you're paying Apple for every transaction. Ladies and gentlemen, telecom companies, that's all they do. They own the foundation that other businesses, that other consumers live off of in order to make money on the other side. This is where you build a business that other people can leverage on. And let me tell you, you are never going to be replaceable. It is so hard to build that kind of a business that once you hit that sweet spot, baby, no one's going to replace you. On that note, your girl has to hop on a call, a business call. So I'm going to close on this. And this is what I want to say. And I had to really write this down is, first of all, you guys, stop pitching. Whether you're an investor coming to the continent and trying to pitch your investment fund, blah, blah, blah. Whether you're a member of the diaspora trying to pitch your business for people to pay you for it, just stop. First of all, start by controlling something. Ask yourself, what can I control? Do I control access to certain relationships who move the dial? And those relationships are the decision maker, the capital owners that can speed up the process to fund a startup. So the startup will need me in order to access that capital, and I make a cut in between. I make a commission in between. Do I have a relationship with that person that approves licenses for other businesses to get it? Who do I know, and how do I gatekeep that relationship and making sure that I'm in between that transaction? Do I own a piece of asset that other people need for leverage to make money off of? You guys, this is what you need to start controlling. Do I own supply that the mass needs? This is the kind of control that you need to start thinking about. And I would definitely say stop building businesses that are so easy to replicate, to copy. Just stop, right? It's a hobby at this point. It is not a business. Stop lying to yourself and start building businesses that control and own the bottleneck. And again, in my example, the DRC right now, giving away energy licenses. Rather than getting on the comments on my YouTube shorts about the government needs to build infrastructure, go build the infrastructure, monetize off of it, privatize it. This is the winning model. And I really think that the window is wide open for Africa right now. And you playing the right game, you being in the right rooms, you leveraging the right businesses, the right contacts, the right asset, is really what will set you apart. On that note, I adore you all, and make sure to subscribe and share. And like I said, stay tuned. I'm launching a PDF kit for remittance leverage. I'm excited for that. Thank you.